who learns of your ways, who silently washes the feet, who is willing just. So may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be pleasing unto you, Lord, for you are our rock and our redeemer. Amen. CNN once had a headline for one of their news stories. It was when Mother Teresa was being canonized as a saint. And the headline read this: Mother Teresa, not a saint to her critics. Moral of the story, even Mother Teresa had critics. Can you believe that? Even she had critics. When we read today in the Apostle Paul's teachings, his letter to the church in the Corinthians, he didn't want to bring shame to what the church was doing in Corinth, but he wanted to make sure they were doing it in the right spirit. Almost like a Mother Teresa spirit at her best. And Mother Teresa would tell you she probably would have never thought of herself as a saint, even though she was then later canonized as one. She would have thought of herself as the song we sang. Loving puts us as a servant. Loving puts us as a disciple. Loving puts us in an expression of serving because it teaches us the true meaning of what the cross was about. It was about service to humanity, so that we may know grace, so that we may share that grace with others. So Paul writes, listen, I don't want to put shame to you. I'm going to send Timothy to you, one of his followers, somebody he had mentored. We'll get into that in a second in the sermon. But I don't want to bring shame, but I want you to watch out for being arrogant in the faith. It seems like right now we live in two extremes many times in our political discourse. I think it's in the chatter out there. I don't always think it's in the local discourse. But one extreme, I'd like to label the arrogance extreme, the puffed up extreme. It seems to reside in many ways. Sometimes it resides in my occupation. May I, as a pastor, never look at this, what I'm standing on, hopefully not as a stage. I know we call it a stage, but hopefully I don't look at it as a stage, or even worse, like it was a runway. I know we're almost a year in, and some of you remember, and some of the kids remember, I almost treated this stage like a takeoff runway that first Sunday we were here, right? I was running up and down the aisles, I was so excited, it was so big. But may I, as a pastor, consider myself just one of the called, one who is amongst all of you. As our opening call to worship said, we are called. So may I never see the stage or any part of this as a way to be arrogant or puffed up. In my profession alone, arrogance meter can run off the hook, right? We have seen examples in our news. They're not confidential examples. They get played out in our public discourse of pastors who probably because they weren't careful, as Paul was warning the Corinthian church, got some arrogance, got some ego, got some puffed upness, and the next thing you know, there were some things that happened in their ministry, in their personal lives, that really were not things to look up to. But we know people are mixed bags. It doesn't mean you throw away all the good, but it does mean that the puffed up to the arrogance meter was just off the scale. That happens in my profession. It happens all in many professions, right? Marianne, there's never been a musician who's been arrogant or puffed up. Never, right? It's never happened, right? It happens in actors and actresses. There's never been somebody who's been the president of a university that's never gotten puffed up, right? There's never been somebody who's been a head of an organization, the head of Wise Markets or something like that. It's never happens, right? That someone's arrogance can get, and it never, this is where it never happens. It never happens in our politics, right? Politicians are never puffed up or arrogant. That never happens, right? The arrogance meter, right? Paul warns against that. Watch out for the arrogance. Just because you're now following church report, watch out for the arrogance meter. It can be really turned up well. And if we're going to be mentors, if we're going to be Paul's to Timothy's out of the world, or if we're going to be mentored by Paul's, we got to watch out for arrogance. But there's one other thing we got to watch out, because I think we live in a time where the extremes get the voice, when really most people are not living in this extremist world. They really want to be like the hymn we sang, loving puts us on our knees in service, that we follow the great master's call like he served on the cross. And so arrogance is the one extreme that we got to watch out for, especially when we want to be mentors or are called to be mentors. The other extreme that I see gets played out too many times is in the unworthy extreme. It's the exact opposite of the arrogance or the puffed up extreme that thinks it's all about me and it's all, the world revolves around me. It's the other extreme, right? In which the critic that lives inside our head, because there's other critics too. Mother Teresa had critics, right? Like I said, But the critic that lives inside my head tells me I'm not worthy. Marianne has played several times the prelude, and I think even sang it once about that. I am a child of the one true King. I'm not ashamed of being that. I love that song. Amazing Grace is the song I sing. But there are voices that will tell us. These are the voices in our head, the song says. It says I'm unworthy. Because I'm broken, because I'm a sinner, the unworthy extreme pops out. And then we get paralyzed. We do what we said in the prayer of confession that we had for our invocation. We serve just at convenience because we think we're not worthy. We don't carve out the time to be a mentor, to be a disciple, because we think we're not worthy. I think both extremes Paul has warned about in his writing today. He's warning to the Corinthian church, listen, some of you become arrogant. Like, I'm not going to come and check up on you, Paul says, but I am. I'm going to send Timothy. I don't want this gospel to be about talk and about the talk and your arrogance and your being puffed up. Instead, I want it to be about the power of the kingdom. And in the same token, Paul has oftentimes had to write to others, listen, you're a child of God. You are worthy. Don't let the critic that's between your two ears get you down. You are made in God's image, and you are loved. And I come then in those terms, I think Paul says, with a gentle spirit, not with a lot of discipline, but with a spirit of encouragement, a spirit of lifting you up. For the kingdom of God, Paul says, is not a matter of talk. I kind of think it's funny, because many times when we gather to hear about the kingdom of God, you gather on a Sunday morning, you gather in Bible study, and what do we do in Sunday morning or Bible study? It's all about talk, right? No, it's not all about talk. It's about power. What type of power? A power that's the opposite of the world. It's not the power that can put one down. It's not a power that can be critical so that others don't think they're worthy. And it's not a power that is all in ego and boasting and arrogance, which we see in the world. It's a power that comes in service. It's a power that comes in modeling being a disciple. It's a power that comes in being a Paul to Timothy, to mentoring others, to sharing God's love with others. The power comes in service and in mentoring and in modeling discipleship. It does not come in arrogance, and it does not come with the voice saying you're not worthy, or with others saying in a critical way that you're not worthy. It's a power that comes not in those extremes, but in the work of serving God. Last week, in our scripture, when we were talking about Jesus' words to the Pharisees, when the Pharisees were putting down the way that his disciples were carrying on their work. And the Pharisees said, hey, listen, they're not following the traditions. And Jesus says it's not about the form of religion. It's not about just the traditions. It's about the heart of religion. I think the heart of religion is truly willing to sacrifice for Christ, to not listen to the voices that will put you down, or to be too puffed up that you think you're better than everyone else. The heart of religion is in the heart of a servant who knows we're a sinner and needs grace, but is also willing to put that aside, not for their own ego, but for God's will, to do service in Christ, to mentor, to model, and disciple. So now that we know the two extremes that we got to watch out for, the extreme that Paul warned when he was sending Timothy, let's talk a little bit about how Paul was, this is kind of churchy terms here, basically, is how Paul mentored Timothy. If you ever hear somebody say, oh, we need Pauls in this world to Timothys, and we need Timothys who are willing to be mentored by Pauls, really it's a mentor-mentee relationship. Throughout this, we're going to be talking about Jesus and the disciples last week. Paul and Timothy is a little bit of this week. We will eventually talk about Elijah and Elisha, and a good one, too, that end the sermon series will be Esther and Mordecai. I kind of even see both of them back and forth as being Paul's and Timothy's to one another. But really what it means is just being a mentor to somebody and modeling discipleship. Now when you do this, it doesn't mean you do it in arrogance, and it doesn't mean you can do it in saying I'm not worthy. It means you do it and be real and authentic. And a real authentic person. And I think the way we as Christians can best model being mentors and being disciples is by following something that came all the way from the founder of the faith we live in right now, John Wesley, the United Methodist Church. It's in following his 3 rules. If we follow his 3 simple rules, they keep us from arrogance, they keep us from saying we're unworthy, and they keep us as people who can model discipleship and be mentors to others. Some of you know these 3 rules. I think we desperately need them in our society today. They'll stop us from being arrogant. They'll help us when Paul sends his Timothy's to the church, and others come to speak, like Paul sent Timothy to the church of Corinthians. Others come to speak to us to remind us it's not all about talk. It's about kingdom power, which puts us in service. What are those 3 rules? The first one is, you might know it, do no harm. What a wonderful rule. It seems so simple, and it's not simple. It is simple, but it's not simplistic. It is deep. When you're asked to do no harm, it's not just, oh, okay, I won't hurt somebody physically. It means also watching our words and our language. We're going to model discipleship and be mentors, be Paul's to Timothy's. We're going to watch our language. Sometimes we're too nonchalant, we're too cavalier with our language. We just speak it, and the words are out there. Once the words are out there, it's like the tube of toothpaste, right? You take the tube of toothpaste. Once you put the toothpaste on the toothbrush, can you put the toothpaste back in the tube? I guess you can, but it's really messy, and it's really hard. We need to not be cavalier and nonchalant. And sometimes when we don't know the best language, because sometimes I don't always know the best language, I think it's okay to admit that. And that shows that you're willing to learn and using great terms to lift others up. Do no harm is not just physical. It's also the language we speak. It's also, too, when we're making ethical decisions. Today in our middle school, Sunday school, but I also know, too, in the children and preschool Sunday school, we're talking about wisdom for the month of September. And the difference between just being somebody who's smart, you can be really, I always like when they say you can be really book smart, but you can lack common sense, right? The difference between being smart and being wise. Wisdom is sometimes stepping back and saying, I can speak here, but if I do no harm in the situation, even if I think I'm right, then I would do good. Wisdom is having that discernment. It's deep. It's not just not doing something physically. It's using our words appropriately, and it's taking pause and discerning. And it's also being patient in how we deal with others. That is do no harm. If we do that, we are then modeling discipleship, and we're good mentors. We're good Pauls to Timothy's. Timothy was sent to the Corinthian church because Paul had instructed him how to teach them not to be arrogant, how not to do any harm, how to come maybe not with a rod of discipline, but with the gentle spirit that the scripture talks about. The second rule is do all the good you can, and you can go on in all the times you can and all the places you can, as long as you ever can. Cecil Williams, emeritus pastor at Blythe Memorial Church in San Francisco, Blythe Memorial United Methodist Church, I once heard him speak. And he said one time, people made fun of Blythe Memorial because they were doing all these programs, and basically people were jealous of the programs, the social good, all the good they could do, and all the ways they could and all the times they could. They were making fun of it. So Cecil said people would just make fun of them. And you know how they make fun of them? They said this, oh, you're nothing but a bunch of do-gooders. And Cecil said, well, if that's the worst thing somebody ever calls me all my life, I'm doing good. Oh, you're nothing but a bunch. May the people of Christ United Methodist Church one day be insulted by being called you nothing but a bunch of do-gooders. Right? What an amazing insult. It was meant for harm, but really what Cecil is saying, yes, we are do-gooders in the name of the Lord. Do-gooders because of the cross. Do-gooders because of what we sang. And not do-gooders like we prayed in our prayer confession, just at our convenience. Do-gooders for Christ as much as we can. Do good in all the times, places, as long as you ever can. Our heritage dates back, and our name and our heritage dates back to an insult. Methodist is part of our heritage. United comes from our evangelical United Brother roots. Some of you might have those roots. You might have evangelical or United Brother. Some of you might have the Methodist roots or the Methodist Episcopal roots. Well, Methodism came from John Wesley having holiness clubs in Oxford. And in those holiness clubs, they had a method for how they studied Scripture, how they prayed, and how they did good in helping others. And people in Oxford were just so irritated by these do-gooders over there, and they started to say, oh, you're nothing but a bunch of Methodists, and the name took. It was a method to helping others to proclaim the gospel. If we're going to model discipleship and be good mentors, be Paul's to Timothy's, not be arrogant or say we're unworthy, but come in a gentle spirit, then we must do no harm and do good. And the final rule to model discipleship, John Wesley had it down. I feel like I'm cheating because this is John Wesley stuff. Sorry, John, I'm preaching your sermon. This is John Wesley stuff, right? It's do no harm, do good. And the third one is stay in love with God. Where the old language used to be attend to all the ordinances of God, which is staying in love with God. What are those ordinances? It's what we're doing right now. We come to worship, and hopefully it's not just about talk, because Paul would be like, it better not be just about talk, he told the church of Corinthians. It's about the power of God in service, not arrogance or unworthiness, but in service. That's how you're a good mentor. That's how you follow discipleship. Staying in love with God is in the worship. It's in the study of Scripture. When you read Scripture, and even when you do it, you think you're doing it in a way that people don't notice. You are modeling how to be a disciple. You are being a Paul to some Timothy who doesn't even know you are being a Paul to him. You are modeling in a gentle way how the word of the Lord is important. It is important to study. It is important to know. Studying Scripture, prayer, acts of mercy and kindness where we help one another, not at our convenience. Let me tell you, sometimes I've got my to-do list and a call comes in and I'll be like, oh, I really got to get to these 15 emails. And let me tell you, if any of you are in leadership or just even in a position, doesn't it feel like there's always 15 more emails to answer? Am I the only one that feels that way? There's always 15 more emails to answer, right? And those 15 more emails can be a distraction from actually doing the work of God. And so I'll be, oh, I get these other emails. No, someone's in need now. And you put it aside and do it now. And you all face the same challenge, not just me. We all face that, right? Staying in love with God is the wisdom to discern that challenge. And to know, yes, those emails, because some of those emails are really important, you know? Several emails I sent were about youth group this week. And it's important stuff because that's about modeling and being disciples to our youth. But may the emails and the administration never get in the way. May it find its balance, as hard as it may be, for all of us, to then also model discipleship wherever we may be. Watch out for arrogance. Watch out for unworthiness. If you can ever silence the critic between your ears, and let me tell you, I battle him daily. I don't know if you battle him. I battle the critic that's right up here. Sometimes it's the worst critic. Oh, what are you doing, Ryan? You're no good. You don't know what you're doing. Like, boy, you can battle him and sing this. I am a child of the one true King. Amazing Grace is the song I sing. And so you can have that. Watch arrogance, watch unworthiness. Instead, power comes in service, not talk. And then finally, how can we model discipleship? Be a good mentor? How can you be a Paul to a Timothy? Do no harm. Do good. Stay in love with God. Let us pray. Almighty and gracious God, when a world can be overrun by critics, by complaints, when a world can be overrun by arrogance and puffed upness, when we can see in our political sphere, and Lord, let's face it, let's not point the finger just out there. We can see it in our own, sometimes, church leadership. Lord, I'm pointing the finger at my own stuff as a pastor. To watch out for the arrogance, but also watch out for being a good dad. Watch out for the critic in our head that says we're unworthy. In a world where both those exist, help us to not be about talk, but about your true power. Help us to come with a gentle spirit, as Paul sent Timothy, to learn. Help us to do no harm. Doing that, we model discipleship and we become good mentors. Help us to do all the good we can. In doing that, we model discipleship and become good mentors. And help us to stay in love with God, Scripture, prayer, worship, the ordinances you have set up for us. Lord, these are simple rules. No harm, good, love God. They're things that we can internalize fast. Yet, Brother Wesley, through the inspiration of your Holy Spirit, is right. They are the ways to be a disciple. They are the start of the discipleship path. And they are the ways that we can then be mentors. And as we do this, Lord, may we realize none of us are perfect. All of us are broken and have sinned. We're all your children in that. And Lord, as we know that, let us be real and authentic. Because when we're real and authentic, then we can mentor. We can let the light of you shine through us. Guide us, Lord, this week in all things. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.